Hi, so I'm going to zoom in on one project that I found really interesting, and perhaps we can tease out some of the things, and it aligns with well, it aligns with open IoT or responsible IoT. And I think the first step is getting people to understand a bit more about what things we're putting into their home. I'm particularly interested in talking to people who don't know anything about technology yet, who will hold up their hands and say, it's all gibberish to me. And my work at Raspberry Pi was mainly focused on teaching young people how to code. So I found out that we kept on running these workshops with young people, and they would do really well, and they'd come out from a half an hour workshop and they'd go up to a parent and say, I've learned how to do XYZ, and the parent would go, that's nice, dear. And I was thinking it's really hard work, because then they go home and they don't carry on making, they don't have a supportive network at home. So how do I build up something which means that they will go away with their parent, and perhaps, hopefully, the parent will feel more confident in getting involved in these conversations as well. So I got a commission from the Craft Council with kind of free rein to design a workshop. So I decided I would build a plant robot kit, and you can see my PCB is here, so super friendly, hopefully good looking. We added I added like little, handwritten signs and things so that we could explain each component. And these two are actually key rings, a really important part of the workshop. So there was a little LED button and things that they had on there. So we would test the light sensor later on with their torch, but it meant that they had this kind of thing that they owned at the end of the workshop. So during the workshop, they would click out their PCB, they would attach it on top of a Raspberry Pi, they would wire it up, and then they could choose what sensors they used and then what the LEDs did. And then we put in loads of little Easter eggs, like you couldn't build the enclosure with just two hands, you needed three, which meant the partners had to work together. And we started off the workshop by saying, okay, who's into gardening and who's into computing? And on the whole, it was the adult who was like, I know about gardening, and the young people who were like, well, I'm interested in computers. And the idea was we wanted them to build a relationship together where they were both helping each other learn, and go away with this joint project that they could then build on and carry on working with him. And they went through the workshop. It was by far the most successful engagement I've ever had, especially the follow-up to that. And we actually had some extra bits that they could go away with. So they would build this thing, and then we were like, and if you go online to the website, you can learn how to add a camera module to do a time lapse of your camera growing. And I think what I found so interesting about it was that the idea of giving people excuses to come to the workshop, because we found like adults weren't signing up for these kind of hobby-esque electronics workshops. So we needed to give them an excuse, and children are a great excuse. So they would turn up, they would do these projects together, and they would go away interested, happy, and engaged. And we found some really interesting things, like when it came to, we had quite a section which was quite a lot of code, quite a lot of typing, that despite the young people being the ones that kind of put their hands up and said, I'm the computer person, the adults were the ones that we made type the big long things, and we're actually much quicker and all kinds of things. And we'd add in things like, right, okay, what's your favorite plant? Okay, it's this. Do they need hot temperatures, cold temperatures, high humidity, low humidity? And the adults on the whole would say, well, it's this, and it needs high humidity, and it needs high temperature. And we're like, okay, well, this is why we could do with a temperature and humidity sensor for you, and we'll set the parameters to this and that. What do you want your LED to say to you, and how do you want to be notified? Oh, okay, well, I want the red LED to flash when the temperature is too high, and if the water is too low, then the blue one will flash, for example. And it was all of these extra conversations around the workshop which were really interesting. So we were able to break down how each component worked and how each sensor was important to them. And they went away with this, not necessarily connected to the internet yet, although that was another extra Easter egg that we provided on the website, was that they understood how this thing worked, and they'd made it from a PCB. And they went away feeling very confident that they knew how to build this piece of technology. They had done. They'd chosen all the behaviors. They could see the code, and they could change it however they'd like. And it kind of opened us up to lots more conversations, and building workshops around identifying these little building blocks which allow the conversations to happen is super important. And we're going to be duplicating this kind of workshop and building on it even more. The idea that me and Rory were saying earlier is I might do a cooking one, where has people heard of sous vide? Yeah, so under vacuum, and I've made a an add-on board where you just connect a slow cooker and basically a temperature probe, and it turns the slow cooker on and off to keep it at a certain temperature. But it means we can talk about food chemistry and how temperature is important for how you cook different kinds of foods and things. And I'm really interested in these other topics that make it relevant for people. So everyone likes plants. Pretty much everybody can have a pot plant that's, accessible. Everyone has to eat at some point, and we can start discussing that. So all my workshops don't turn up and expect you to be interested in technology. We expect that you're interested in all kinds of things, and we figure out how technology can enhance that or make it easier or just for fun. So I think I'm going to stop there. It's a short one. Yeah? Yeah? Or shall I can talk about vans. I mean, I could talk about vans all day. Have I got time? Okay. Okay. So I love vans. So I've become quite interested. So I have a camper van that I've been reconverting every year for the last 3 years. And I found it a really interesting kind of thought exercise, because never before have I thought, in my little house on wheels, I have to really focus on how much electricity I'm using because I have a leisure battery that has a certain amount of energy. I now, whenever I park in car parks, I park in the sunniest spot possible so that the solar panels get some juice. And then things like my diesel, I'm affected by, how much money I have to how much diesel I can buy, whether I can turn the heater on and off because that's what uses the fuel, or whether I want to go more miles. And it has this kind of framework where I'm suddenly thinking about the things I'm consuming, the things I'm turning on, when I'm going to charge my phone. Should I charge my laptop right now, or should I wait until tomorrow when it's sunny? Like all kinds of things that I never thought about before. And I had been completely naive of the van life hashtag movement. Which yeah, anyway, enough. Well, there are lots of people in vans that use it. I don't know, does that count as a movement? And I hadn't thought it before, but actually there's all kinds of people that are looking at alternative housing now, be that tiny eco-friendly homes, homes that do move around, where actually this information is really important. Knowing about the humidity levels in my van not only makes me less likely to catch a cold, but also stops the van rusting. So how can I keep note of that? If I'm leaving stuff in the van and I've got a fridge on, but it's stupidly hot because I've parked it in the sun, I'd really like to learn those lessons rather than just know that the fridge has drained my battery and my food is bad. So I started building just little add-on boards that sit on top of super cheap Wi-Fi chips, so that people could get notifications when their van was overheating or if the humidity was too high, and beeped at you saying, open the window. And really simple things that, I don't know, within this context, it didn't feel like I was building a fake nest. It felt like I was making something really useful for this situation, but in turn made me really aware of my surroundings and what resources I was using. And if we could maybe apply that as a good example, and we're kind of toying with the idea of, do we make a mini home? And we'll be talking about IoT homes next. That we can take to places and discuss with people about these kind of things, because actually the use of energy, the use of fuel and things is important for all of us. We just don't really think about it because we're plugged into the grid. So having this kind of decentralized thing that I can drive around to anywhere, but I still have to think about these things much closer to home, is a really interesting framework. And I get to go and work, and write my report up a mountain if I choose. But yeah, it's just consideration that it's completely opened up my mind to how homes could be monitored and how actually it's very personal, and we could have a very close relationship to what my choices are if your choices are limited. That makes sense? Okay, I'm going to stop there and ask me more questions later.